Well, hello everyone, and welcome to what can be considered the most legendary racing circuit in the world. Welcome to Spa Francorchamps, and welcome to the new 2022 season of the ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship. We're not quite in the main season just yet. We've got two shootout qualifiers to get ourselves over and done with before we get to that main season, but I'm very thankful that you're all able to join us, join me here today. I am the only one on the commentary. My name is Conor Manick, and you might be familiar with me commentating on other RaceRoom competitions as well as other simulators as well. But yes, we're getting towards the very start of qualifying here for the moment. Let's take a look at how today is going to work first, though, because for each of these shootouts, this being one of them, we'll have 10 drivers qualify themselves into the main season of the ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship. But that's not the whole story, because if we look at this, we've already got drivers that have qualified from the last season. So that is your three-time champion of Moritz Lohner from Door eSports. You've got Jacob Brzezinski there as well. Ben Spanky, Florian Hasse, Isaac Price have all qualified due to finishing well in the main GT3 season last year. And also, we've got 3 promotions from our support series as well. Emre Can, who completely dominated the GT4 season last time, well, he gets himself a slot in the main season here this year as well. Adam Pinces and Ottaviani get that same opportunity as well. So we've already booked a handful of slots into the championship next season, but however, over the next 2 weeks, we'll be deciding the final 20 to be joining those drivers in the main season. And well, let's have a look at who's going to be competing here today in this particular shootout. It will be Marco Pejic, Leonard Kripner, Julian Kunze, Jack Keithley, Christopher Hergfeldt, Michael Raschel, Max Pfeiffer, Peter Pilska in the top 8 in the leaderboards. And of course, you have Philip Drees, Mark Garsner, Jonas Vanna, Kevin Siggy, Axel Vermeulen, Jeffrey Rietveld, David Nagy, and Luciano Wittwer as well, getting themselves involved. It's not only those 16 drivers, we have another 16 drivers as well that were the second half of the leaderboards, the time attack leaderboards coming into this one as well. So we will have, ideally we'd have a 32 car starting grid. Looks like only 31 drivers have currently connected themselves up to the session for the moment. Let's have a look at the calendar then, because of course both shootouts will actually be basically one day after each other here, as we get ourselves Spa up first, then we have Hockenheim for our second shootout in just a couple of days time, and then at the start of February, getting towards the middle of it more like, we'll have our first round of the main championship at Brands Hatch. Then we run the gauntlet all the way through to our finale at Monza. That date is still undecided because, of course, COVID regulations, pending. We might have that as a live event at the first round of the season for the real ADAC GT Masters Championship. But if not, and if the regulations do not allow that, then we'll of course have it on a different date, and we will continue to have the competition online as well. Let's have a look at the timing structure for this shootout then. Of course, we've already got the first 2 underway already, and in fact the third is also currently going on as well. We've got the final 5 minutes of qualifying coming up for you in just a handful of moments' time. Then we've got race number 1 of 15 minutes. That's just a straight up sprint race. No pit stops to be concerned about in that one. And then, of course, we get ourselves another qualifying session. This time it'll be lone qualifying. Drivers will only get themselves 1 lap to be able to set themselves a time. It's sort of like Super Pole qualifying, if you are familiar with that format, before we get ourselves into the second race of today. 30 minutes, double the length of the race number 1, and there will be a mandatory pit stop involved in that one too. And the drivers will have to take 4 tires as well, so there's going to be no shenanigans with regards to that today. But we've got ourselves the final 4 minutes of qualifying, as we've just run very quickly through all of the pre-race spiel. And, we can bring up the standings on the left-hand side, because I have noticed that it seems like Gianmarco Verdizzi and Jack Keithley have decided to set the exact same time. at the very top of the order there. That's you don't often see it, but it's what was happened right now. Verduzzi, well, classified ahead of Keithley at the moment. We got Leonard Kripner in 3rd place in the qualifying order for the moment. And of course, those of you that had watched last season, we've got a little bit of a new overlay going on here as well, trying to reflect, in the best way possible, the way the overlay is in the real world. GT Masters Championship as well. They've done a pretty good job in replicating that so far. Have the guys over at RaceRoom are watching Leonard Kripner currently heading his way around for the moment. Of course, here at Spa Francorchamps, well, draft pretty powerful, especially when it comes to the qualifying laps. That's why you're seeing lots of drivers getting themselves involved in these big drafting trains. That's basically just the way that you need to try and get that extra edge here in qualifying to get a couple of tenths of a second over your competitors. But for now, Ducci leading the way from Keithley, from Kunze. We've got a couple of shuffling further down the order. Pliska getting himself up into 6th place, as is the running here right now. 24 drivers have set themselves qualifying times so far, now 25. 31 we have connected at the moment, so still a handful of drivers towards the bottom of the order that have not set themselves times just yet. That is Christopher Högfeldt, who's heading his way through that final chicane right now. Ilya Drovosikov, Renaud Herbelon. We've got Rian Rudiger, Nikodem Wisniewski, and Jens Fielder, who have not set themselves lap times just yet. But here is Christopher Högfeldt coming across the line and does set a time. Good enough for 4th place on the starting grid here today. And of course, just like we had last season in the ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship, we will have manual rolling starts here today. So you'll see the green flag technically drop, but that is not at the actual start of the race. Drivers will instead form up 2 by 2 to take a pace lap, and then the race start command will come from race control whenever they come out of the final corner. So a little bit of a change of procedures here if you're familiar with the way sort of ranked racing works here on RaceRoom. We've got very little time left remaining in this qualifying session now. Of course, no one's really been able to challenge the top 2 so far. They set those good lap times early on, identical lap times of a 2-minute 15.955. Well, it's as close as you like in qualifying, I suppose. The top, well, technically, if you leave a bit of wiggle room, the top 6 cars are within 1/10 of a second. The top 14 cars are all within half a second of each other here in qualifying. That's how competitive this initial qualifying session is for shootout number 1. Don't forget, we'll have, of course, shootout number 2 coming up in a couple of days' time as well. So you don't have to wait too long before you get yourself more RaceRoom eSports action here. But within the final minute of qualifying, of course, as is the typical thing with RaceRoom, it does tend to show the results just that little bit earlier than we would have wanted. But and it skips to the second page as well, interestingly enough. But take my word for it, we've got Gianmarco on pole position with Jack Keithley in P2. Julian Kunze P3 with Christopher Högfeldt starting P4. Leonard Kripner P5, Max Pfeiffer 6th, Siggy in 7th, Filska in 8th, Marco Pajic starts 9th, and Leon Rudiger in 10th place. Then, well, you saw the 11th through 20th. There's the 21st through 30th in qualifying for the moment. The lap times dropping off just that little bit more towards the bottom bit of the field as you get those qualifiers that had only just got themselves through to this stage by the skin of their teeth in the leaderboards earlier on. Here's a recap of the top 10 then. Jack Keithley actually classified at the very last moment, actually gets himself up into pole position. This is this sometimes does happen as the timer does have a little bit more to run once the results show up on your screen. So Jack Keithley able to get that at the very, very last moment, and we're getting ourselves our gridding procedure underway then for our first shootout of the year in the ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship. Well, Frank Van Room, well, I've been told about the rolling start. It's in the rulebook, but we'll have to see exactly what happens here as we'll get ourselves... well, if they immediately go racing off the starting grid, then we know it's a standing start. If we don't see them in a bit of a hurry coming off the start, then we'll know that's a rolling start. So we'll just have to see what the situation is. Rulebook does say flying manual start, whether or not we'll get that. And that has been relayed to the drivers. is a completely different issue. But we will hope that we'll get it right, and it is a rolling start. But 15 minutes of racing, well, that indicates to me it is a standing start, so maybe a little bit of confusion with the race settings here. Jack Keithley off of pole position, and we're ready then for the first shootout here at Spa Francorchamps. Gianmarco Fiduci trying to challenge him down in towards turn number 1 for the first time. Keithley leads though, and well, Fiduci has to look behind because Kunzer's now heading his way down the inside, and well, can't quite get that position just yet. Fiduci is able to hold on to it. Kunzer third in line, now has to look in his wing mirrors as Leonard Kripno is looking to bear down on him in P4 there. Further back through the order, you've got potentially almost side by side into Orouge and Radion, which is not ideal for the first lap, but they'll all get themselves all sorted out in relatively quick fashion as we now start that long run down the Kemmel Straight in towards Lacombe then, as Keithley has to, well, move around a little bit to try and defend the place from Fiduci, and Kunze also showing the nose towards the inside, but no overtakes inside the top couple of cars just yet. Rudiger and Siggy are looking to try and fight wheel to wheel here, but they have to get line astern by the time Malmedy arrives. Down into Bruxelles or Ravage or whatever corner you want to call it, the long downhill right-hander then into the no-name corner, which actually does have a name now. That's Jackie Ick's corner. They're heading their way through now. Make sure you take, well, maybe a little bit excessive interpretations of the track limits from some of the drivers coming down into there and into Pouhon for the first time. That fantastic double left-hander coming down the hill. Then you look towards the braking zone of Lafania. Everyone is pretty cool, calm and collected here initially in this event. 15-minute sprint race, of course. You would have thought they'd be a little bit more feisty with each other early on, but very well behaved from a lot of the drivers here on the opening lap as they come towards the sort of final sector of the lap now as we head through the first of our 2 Stavelots through Curve of Paul Frere, or Stavelo 2, of course. Many corners have multiple names at this racetrack. And then down the full throttle section towards Blanchimont then, as well, it seems to have, we haven't had many casualties on the start here, let's just say that. Jensfield and Manuel Rodriguez, they seem to have taken the tow back to pit lane. Not sure entirely what has happened to them. Is there going to be any big moves heading down in towards the bus stop for the first time? Yes, there is, as Petr Pilska trying to defend from Wisniewski coming through that corner. The Team Fordzilla driver is able to hold on to that position though, and Wisniewski still remaining in P10 for now. And well, another big braking zone in towards last source. Pilska feels the need to go defensive here for P number 9, and well, Wisniewski not committing to any move through that corner just yet. Remember, the top 10 in our shootout here today will get themselves qualified into the main season of the ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship 2022. And of course, we'll have 2 races this evening as well, so it's the combination of the points between the 2 of them, between the sprint race and of course that feature race just that little bit later on. Let's have a look back towards the front of the field then, because Fiduci, well, he drives all the way up to the back bumper of that fellow BMW in front of him, but doesn't decide to commit to the overtake just yet. And well, still early doors in this race, still only lap number 2 here for this one, so you can understand the reluctance at the front, but it seems like in the mid-pack they are, well, they seem pretty eager to get themselves some door-to-door action coming through Bruxelles. Now Payech in the middle of it, Nagy and Rachel going side by side behind him. Nagy narrowly ahead for the moment. He swings around the outside of Jackie Ick's corner. Dorniden looking to try and get himself involved as well. He's almost run out of road through that particular corner exit. Now on the run down towards Pouhon. Dorniden still having to take a shallower line through. Barner behind, leaning on his back bumper. Someone's wide ahead as well. I think that's David Nagy that had all sorts of problems coming through Pouhon, and now he's coming under threats as, excuse me, it's Michael Rachel, excuse me, that's got themselves wide through there. Now he loses a position, and now Barner might look to capitalize on this one as well as they come out of Lavania and in towards the Stavelos then. And well, that's the order. Dorniden 14th place, Rachel 15th, Barner 16th, and Rietveld in 17th place. It's quite chaotic here, back inside of the mid-pack. Things a little bit calmer at the very front though, as we see Michael Rachel actually pull towards the outside here. Blanchimont and Barner sticks his way down the inside there. I have to wonder if that might have been a slowdown penalty for Michael Rachel that he has to try and sieve, or if he just got a poor exit coming through the traction zone, but now in towards the bus stop chicane, and no, Michael Rochel, the back end swings out. He's out into the grass and has to rejoin, preferably in a safe manner. No, he just brings that car down on towards the pit lane. I don't think we're going to see that car going off of pit lane either. I think he's probably going to call it a day at this point. But solo car instant there for Michael Rochel, who's pretty close to the cars involved in that one, but I don't think there was any contact made in amongst that entire grouping. We've got 10 minutes to go. 5 minutes have elapsed of this initial sprint race. Seems like the front couple of cars trying to pull themselves a gap for the moment. Heathley, Fiducci, Kunze, Kripner all trying to establish their four-car pack. It's caused a little bit of a split here back to Högfeldt. Högfeldt still has the edge of the slipstream of the four cars ahead of him, but what he can't afford to lose is that draft to those cars ahead to try and keep himself in contention for a podium finish here today. So the 74, well, that's his overall task, his main task at the moment, but he has to be cautious about those machines behind him as well. Pfeiffer, not a very slow driver whatsoever either, and definitely one of those that likes to stick his nose down the inside. Given the opportunity, Rudiger also involved in this train as well. Everything's quite respectful so far. Of course, we had a few altercations in the mid-pack just that little bit earlier on. But apart from Pfeiffer, well, he was pretty, Rochel, he was the only casualty in anything happening back there. Everyone's strung out pretty much single file in the top half of the field for the moment. Of course, the ideal situation for these drivers is to just score inside that top 10 and consistently inside of that top 10 across the two races that we'll have today. That will be the recipe for success, to get yourselves into the top 10 in points at the end of the day, to get yourself that slot in the championship. That's the overall goal for everyone. Well, Keithley, Fiducci, Kunze, Krupner, Högfeldt, Pfeiffer, Rudiger, Siggy, Liska, Wisniewski, all inside the top 10. Someone spun around through the bus stop chicane. It's going to collect another car as well. That's Alexander Dorneden that's spun around in front of traffic, and oh, that's not gone well at all, has it? I think Garstner was the other driver involved in that one as well. Yeah, Garstner came up on that one, had absolutely nowhere to go, with Dorneden spun in the middle of traffic. We just saw the big cloud of smoke on that shot from down the pit straight. And well, Dorneden was the car spun around. Didn't exactly see what caused that one, and unfortunately on this stream here, well, for the English stream at least, we won't be able to get any replays of anything that happens, unfortunately. But here we go then, 3 wide down in towards the comb. Is that Kevin Siggy going slow? Yes, it is. Siggy must have got himself a slowdown penalty off the top of Eau-Rouge and Radion. It is a very easy place to get yourself a slowdown penalty. The track limit is quite strict coming through that section of the circuit, and as a result, you might see some drivers decide to try and serve that slowdown penalty coming down the Kemmel Straight in towards the comb. Of course, you don't want to slam the brakes on immediately to try and get it served. You can just lift off slightly so that you do not give away any unnecessary time while you are serving the slowdown penalty. But Wisniewski continuing to come under pressure here from Pliska. Of course, Pliska doing fantastically well recently in anything RaceRoom eSports related. Still slightly more work to do here today, but P number 9, well, if it finishes as it is, P number 9 in this sprint race won't be too bad whatsoever. A few differences compared to how the main season worked last year for this shootout. Of course, we will not have a reverse grid for the second race. We will have a second qualifying session. However, it will be super pole qualifying, so they only get themselves one flying lap, and well, they get themselves the track to themselves as well, as it's sector lone qualifying. So no one to impede you, no one to help you either with the draft. It's all about the drivers versus the racetrack, but we'll talk more about that once we get to it. Just crossed underneath, 6 minutes to go here at Spa Francorchamps for the sprint race. A little bit of fighting going on further back in the pack, it seems. Sort of towards the bottom end of the top 20, you're seeing cars go wheel to wheel. Daniel Berker, Leonard Carton are the two drivers that are door to door at the moment, down in towards the braking zone for La Source. And well, We'll see who comes out on top in that one. Carton on the inside, Burke on the outside will try to get the drive off the corner. They're going to maintain the side-by-side action coming down the old pit straight. Carton has to fall back in line, though. You do not ideally want to get yourself wheel-to-wheel through the route and Radion. It's for the vast majority of the time, it's a recipe for disaster. We've got 5 minutes to go of this race. Time flies when you are having fun, and drivers have kept it pretty respectful as well, which is absolutely fantastic to see. As we had a look there, I think Jonas Vanna had a look on the car ahead of him of Axel Vermeulen. Dinya looking to try and get himself aggressive now, as well as Philip Drace sticking his nose down the inside through Malmatis. This 4-car pack for P number 15, looking to give us a little bit of action in the latter portions of this race now. Seeing a lot of comments regarding the sheer amount of BMWs, and yeah, that's kind of what happens here in these shootouts, as the drivers can pretty much choose any car they want, and of course they know the track beforehand, so therefore they're going to pick the best car for the track. Of course, that's going to hopefully not be the case coming into the main season, as the drivers' car selections will be a little firmer at the very start of the season, and that will have to be a compromise between all the circuits on the calendar. So hopefully when we get to see the main season, then we'll also see more variety in terms of the manufacturers that are represented out there. But since this is Spa Francorchamps, the vast majority of the drivers thinking the BMW is the strongest at this circuit. That seems to be the consensus. Not to say that there are not other cars involved in this one as well. Axel Vermeulen has decided to go with the Corvette. He is the only Corvette out there. There's actually 2 Mercedes out there. Of course, one of those Mercedes is right behind Vermeulen at the moment. That is Jonas Vanna, looking to try and commit around the outside at the bus stop, trying to swing his way through, try and get the line off the corner to get the speed down across the start-finish line, and hopefully make a move down in towards the last source. But looks like that's not quite going to work out in the way he thought. Still forces Vermeulen to think about the defense. There's a little bit of a tap between the two there. The P15 on circuit. Vermeulen still maintains his position ahead, though, for the moment. Still being challenged, however. Vanna trying to go around driver's right-hand side towards Eau Rouge and Radion. He's going to think better of it and duck back in line, though, through that fast uphill section. And, well, maybe looking to try and launch one through. Oh, what's happened to Julian Kunze? I think Kunze might have got himself involved in a battle here. Leonard Krippner getting himself up into P3, so we do have to kind of forget about that battle going on in the mid-pack right now, because the top 5 have decided that they want to have a bit of a scrap. Högfeld looking around the outside at Bruxelles, but can't make any progress through there. Follows as tightly as he can regardless. Coming up towards Jackie X corner now. And, well, Kunze definitely looking in his big mirrors, looking for the next move that Högfeld might be able to pull on him. It's not going to be down in towards Pouon, not one of your main overtaking opportunities. You're very lucky to try and get yourself alongside coming through here. It would have to be a continuation of the battle from the couple of corners previous. Cancelling one down the inside at the start of Lafania's, though, requires a pretty brave move, and he requires you to follow pretty closely off of Pouon, but that's also an option as well. 2 minutes left to go of this race then, and well, the top 5 has started to come alive. Jack Heathley, though, at the very front of the field, he has over half a second advantage over Gianmarco Feduzzi, so the Brit leads the Italian at the moment here. And then it's quite a gap back to Leonard Krippner, Julian Kunze, Christopher Högfeld, who is in the sort of, well, at the front 3 cars of this little train that we have here at the very front. Högfeld getting a very good run coming out of Blanchimont, forces Julian Kunze to go defensive in towards the bus stop. Late in the brakes goes the Swede around the outside. He's got the inside now for the second apex. There's a bit of door up and coming through the corner, but Högfeld's not able to carry the momentum through, and Kunze maintains P4 for now, but that was a big look from Christopher Högfeld to try and squeeze his way through, and, well, you can understand the desperation given that we are, well, very late on in the race. 1 minute left on the clock here. Doing about 2 minutes 2 minutes 15s, 2 minutes 16s, 2 minutes 17s in terms of lap time here. So this should be the final lap here in this situation. Pfeiffer looking to try and get himself a run over Högfeld this time around. So Högfeld goes from attack to defense in this situation, as now he has to cover off P5 from a hard charging Max Pfeiffer. The German looks to the outside as fights going on ahead as well. Kunze and Krippner going wheel to wheel through that Coombe. Look at that dangerous RaceRoom given as well, swinging their way through Malmedy. Kunze forced out wide up onto the curb, but he's able to continue the battle down into the braking zone of Bruxelles. They're still absolutely level coming through the long right-hander, but due to be on the inside, Krippner will get the better line through and will be able to maintain his position ahead. But I don't think this battle is done quite yet, everyone. As Kunze, not the ideal run off of Jackie Ick's corner, loses a little bit of time to Krippner ahead. So Krippner just feeling that little bit safer for the moment. Jack Keithley and Gianmarco Fiduci, they are at the front. They still have over half a second between them, so I don't think, pending a mistake from Keithley, that that's going to have any action towards the end here, although Keithley did just lose about 1/10 of a second through one corner, so never say never, as Krippner getting very wide coming off of the Fournier. Carl getting very, very upset indeed. Hasn't lost a whole bunch of time though, but it does bring Julian Kunze back into the picture then on this final lap. Kunze sitting inside of that slipstream all the way down towards Blanchimont. It will have to be a last-ditch move coming through the bus stop for the final time to be able to get this one done. Where does Julian Kunze go? Where does Krippner defend? Krippner defends towards the inside. Kunze has to try and go the long way around. Högfeldt and Pfeiffer looking to try and pick up the pieces. This goes wrong as well, but it simply is not. At the very front of the field, it is Jack Keithley coming across the line to win the sprint race here at Spa Francorchamps for shootout number 1. Gianmarco Fiduci in P2, Leonard Krippner in P3, Julian Kunze P4, and Christopher Högfeldt in P5 here today. So that's fantastic stuff indeed inside of the top 5. Some great fighting as well, as the drivers will perhaps take their cool-down laps at this point. As looking further back through the order, you can see the official race results there. Jack Keithley takes the race win from Fiduci, from Krippner, from Kunze, from Högfeldt in that order. So the top 10, all the way down to Pilsker, they'll be pretty positive about that performance in the sprint race. Gives them a good baseline of points to build off of coming into that feature event. Kevin Siggy on the outside of the top 10, but he'll hopefully, well, we know how potent of a racer Kevin Siggy is, so hopefully he'll be a little bit better in terms of the race pace coming into the feature events, with that pit stop to be concerned about as well. Lots of names down here as well. Markovic, Berker down in the bottom end of the top 20. Then you have a couple of surprises from drivers out of position. You've got Mark Gassner, P24. Vitvoets, would have expected a little bit more from him. Same with Rachel. Of course, Rachel had that mistake coming through the bus stop, and Pajic down the order as well. So lots of drivers that will be hoping for a little bit of a better feature event here today. Well, and if they don't, well, they'll have to do another attempt at this one in a couple of days' time in shootout number 2. So let's see that one then. Manuel Rodriguez did not finish in 31st place at the very, very back of the order. So then, that's not the end of proceedings here today, everyone, though. We do have our extended 30-minute race with that scheduled pit stop as well. But before that, we do have that Super Bowl qualifying as well. So that's a lot of excitement on the horizon here today. So you do want to stick around just for that little bit longer to see how this one ends. Of course, I will get the points updates after that last race as quickly as possible from Race Control to tell you who has qualified and who has not. Might take a little bit of time, but we have time for chat here, as we do have the YouTube chat to help us. But as that continues to cycle its way through, again, a lot of the comments about the balance of performance. Yes, I know this is just the way that things are at the moment here with the way that the drivers can pick just what the best car for the track is. So yeah, it is not ideal, but it is the card that we've been dealt for the moment. But I hope everyone is enjoying the proceedings here today as we wait for that session to switch itself over, and then we can get ourselves the second qualifying. You can see that on the timetable at 1940 Central European time. Of course, 1 lap Super Pole qualifying, and then we'll have race number 2 at 15 to 8 Central European time of 30 minutes, with that pit stop involved in that one too as well. So an element of strategy going to be factoring in to that second race, which some drivers are certainly better at than others when it comes to judging which is the best way to go. That's our first look then at who is potentially going to be joining these drivers for the main season of the ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship for 2022. Moritz Lohner, Jacob Brzezinski, Ben Spanke, Florian Hasse, and Isaac Price have already qualified themselves in to next season. Emre Cihan, Adam Pinces, and Alessandro Ottaviani have been able to qualify themselves in as well from the support series from last season. So that's the situation there. So these drivers, well, they don't have to stress about shootout events. They can just sit there and chill, just watch the proceedings going on, watch their potential fellow competitors for the next season work their way through on the through the shootouts. So you know, it's nice to be them. They can focus on the season ahead. But of course, you know, that preparation is going to help perhaps quite a bit coming into that first race of the season at the start of February. These shootout drivers will have a little bit less time to prepare because they're unsure of even if they'll get themselves involved in the main season if today and a couple of days' time does not go well. Just to give you a little bit of an update, we're still trying to connect ourselves up to the next server. It seems like the vast majority of the drivers have been able to get themselves in. It's just that I'm a little bit slow off the mark here with regards to this one, so I do apologize for that one. But I hope you guys have enjoyed that first race. And, well, race number 2 is going to be coming up for you very, very shortly indeed. And, in fact, we can transfer over to that right about now. So we've got ourselves qualifying underway for race number 2. No one set themselves their lap time just yet. Remember, it is lone qualifying, so drivers will be on their own out there, not getting a draft, and, well, also not getting impeded. It's a glass half full versus glass half empty sort of perspective there, as we're seeing Mark Gassner head his way across the line here to set himself his lap time. It is Leonard Krippner that goes fastest of everyone on their one and only qualifying lap. Still lots of drivers yet to set themselves times here. Jack Keithley is still out there and circulating, as he was the race winner last time out. And we've also still waiting to see basically half the field at this point, as they went out just that little bit later than those first group of drivers. Gassner second place, Siggy in second place in qualifying for the moment. Here comes Jack Keithley. Where is he going to come in terms of the race number 2 grid? He'll come 5th place, so starts in 5th for race number 2. So a little bit more work to do for Jack Keithley in this race if he wants to take the double race win here today. Fiducci, though, is able to put up a similarly strong performance compared to qualifying 1. He goes 2nd on the provisional starting grid for race 2. Krippner with a fantastic lap time, though, of 2:15.925. Let's see if anyone's able to beat this at the very end. Here comes Tim Yarshall out of the final corner then. What's his lap time going to be? Good enough for 10th place on the starting grid. So we're still waiting for a handful of drivers to get themselves through at the moment. There's Ilya Drovosikov, the Swiss driver, heading his way through Blanchimont now for Ballas eSports. Let's see what time he's able to set. This is a lot of pressure on one lap here. This is how Super Bowl qualifying usually tends to go. It's a win it or bin it sort of situation. You have no choice but to drive 110%. But now coming across the line is Ilya Drovosikov. Good enough for P24 on the starting grids. And, well, the early qualifying results will show as well. Leonard Krippner on pole position with a fantastic lap there. With Gianmarco Fiducci up into P2. He's looking to get some, well, consecutive podium finishes here today. We got Gassner 3rd, Siggy 4th, Runinger in 5th in the top couple of positions in qualifying. You see page 2 of the qualifiers. That's P11 down to P20, and then page 3 of the qualifiers, all the way down to Jens Fielder, who is the final driver to set themselves a lap time here. We had 2 drivers that weren't able to set a lap time, and that's the risk sometimes of this type of qualifying session. You only get that one chance, and if you cause that lap to be invalidated for any reason, then, well, you are out of luck, and you have to start at the very back of the starting grid. So there's the recap of the top 10 in qualifying. Krippner, Fiducci, Gassner, Siggy, Raschel, then Rudinger, Keithley, Nagy, Hugveld, and Rietveld. That's going to be the starting grid here for race number 2. So we've learned that the rulebook is kind of a little bit misleading, despite it saying saying rolling starts. It is in fact a standing start here for this one we're expecting. So gridding procedure underway. Drivers will slowly but steadily get themselves ready on the starting grid and get themselves prepared for 30 minutes of racing. You got to consider the pit stops involved as well. Which drivers will go for an early stop and get themselves an undercut or attempt the undercut, which drivers will try to push the fuel tanks as long as they will go and get fresher tyres to make the overtakes at the end of the event. Pretty easy to overtake here at Spa Francorchamps. That might be a decent option, but we'll have to wait and see as drivers getting themselves ready now. So race number 2, the endurance race here for shootout number 1 of the ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship is about to get itself underway with Leonard Krippner on pole position. What can he do after that stellar qualifying effort? Fiducci in second place. Let's see what he can do from the inside of the front row. We're off and away here at Spa Francorchamps for the endurance race as Leonard Krippner is a bit slow coming off the start-finish line. Yes, he is, as it's Mark Gassner shooting down the middle. Mark Gassner going to P1 immediately as they head their way through La Source. That's a fantastic start from Mark Gassner from the second row of the starting grid. He gets first on the way down in towards Eau Rouge and Radion for the first time in this endurance race. That is a brilliant, brilliant start from Gassner. Completely swamping everyone as Krippner, he went from 1st to 6th. That's how poor his start was. I wonder if the pressure really got to him in that situation. But now heading their way down in towards the cone for the first time. Here comes Fiducci. Ooh, not going to back out of the move on Mark Gassner. There's Siggy. What's happened to Siggy? Has he got himself another slowdown penalty? He was up there through the first couple of corners, and now he's fallen all the way back, having to defend from a recovering Leonard Krippner, who started on pole position. The red line driver able to maintain that 5th place for now. It was a bit of a chaotic start there here for this one, but everyone's able to keep themselves in it. But big story though is that Jack Keithley got himself involved in an incident early on, and he's fallen pretty much all the way to the back of the field. Pilsker's back there as well. Hugveld's back there as well. So I'm not entirely sure what happened in amongst that grouping of drivers that were just inside of the top 10. But it's absolutely tragic for them. That's going to make their chances in this race slim to none in terms of trying to qualify into the main season for 2022. They might have to go through and do shootout number 2 instead. But or rather, not shootout number 2 instead. They perhaps... well, they might get themselves another opportunity, but 28 minutes left to go here. Still on the first lap on the way down that long stretch down towards Blanchimont then. Rudinger, 3rd place, closing in on Gianmarco Fiducci as Gassner has just turned on the afterburners. He is trying to get away at the very front of this field. Rudinger now trying to challenge the 2nd place. Gonna not commit to the move into the bus stop though. Raschel behind late on the brakes, trying to draw his car as close as possible to the fellow BMW ahead. That is the end of lap number 1. Who's diving down on towards the pit lane though? It's Leonard Krippner. It's Leonard Krippner coming down on towards the pit lane. Wonder what that was for. He had a poor start, must have gotten himself some form of penalty or some form of damage that has caused him to come down on towards the pit lane now. So for a lot of the front runners at the start of or at the end of qualifying, excuse me, trouble has happened to them. So Krippner down the order, Keithley down the order, Hugveld down the order, Fisker down the order as well. Lots of drivers that we were expecting to be fighting at the very front here today having big trouble in this endurance race. Gianmarco Fiducci continuing to, well, not be threatening to Mark Gassner, but just keeping himself in contention, keeping himself big in Gassner's mirrors. It's one way to apply the pressure. Of course, there's not really that much of a rush in this early stage of the race, and in fact it might be beneficial for Gianmarco Fiducci to stay behind here just for the fuel saving reasons, but we'll just have to wait and see what the overall plan is for Gianmarco Fiduci, whether or not in the next couple of laps he's going to be more committed to those moves on your race leader. The field heading their way through the Fania now. Let's have a look back through the order to see how the drivers that had trouble early on are trying to fight their way through the field. Here's Jack Keithley. We'll go on board with him. He has a whole bunch of traffic ahead of him to try and get through on at the moment. It is a bit of a traffic jam. He's got Christopher Högfeldt ahead of him, who's not the slowest driver ever either. Both of them are trying to work to get themselves back through this field to try and score as much points as possible to make sure they're within the same real estate as the top 10 in points at the end of today. That's the tricky situation for these drivers now. They never want to, you never want to be put into the situation, but you have to know how to deal with it in case it happens. And Högfeldt and Keithley, they need to try and get overtakes done and very quickly. There is Högfeldt looking to the inside of Daniel Berger then. Tiny bit of contact between the two coming through the second apex, looking to try and get the drive off the corner now. Will hopefully open up an opportunity down in towards the big defensive move, big block there from Christopher Högfeldt to try and keep the drivers behind him, Herbelon and Keithley in check, but that was a little bit aggressive for me, a little bit too much of a big block towards the braking zone. But here we go, grouping of them all the way down in towards Eau Rouge and Radion. They're side by side behind them. Hilsker and Berger involved as Berger takes a slide through the exit of Radion. There's a big incident, big smash at the top of Radion. This is a mess, an absolute mess at the very back of the order. Fielder involved, Krippner involved, Drace and Dorneden. Well, Dorneden was already a lap down, but either way, my word. Kirill Sovikov involved, Julian Kunze might have gotten a piece of that one as well, but that was a massive crash at the very top of Eau Rouge and Radion. Probably one of the biggest I've seen in RaceRoom, in fact. That was pretty crazy stuff. Thankfully it happened more towards the very back of the field, but either way, good couple of drivers deciding that, well, I've got too much damage now. I'm going to have to take the tow back to the pit lane. So Daniel Berger has retired. Jens Fielder has retired. Philip Drace has retired. Krippner is continuing to stay out there and circulate to try and score as many points as possible, because who knows who might drop off the, who might have another instance in the remaining 24 minutes of this race, and it'll be easy position for him to gain. But my word, that is a big crash. Thankfully, though, we are in sim racing. If that was the real world, then that would have been a bigger issue. Red flag, track repairs, and well, thankfully, sim racing, unless you're in a direct drive wheel where it can put enough force on you to snap your wrists, then well, there's no way you can get hurt in sim racing. So that's the thankful thing about doing this all online and all in sim. But heading out the final corner now. The front handful of drivers, 23 minutes left to go. Remember, we still have that scheduled stop to think about as well. Tyres are required to be changed as well, so you can't just forget about them, just put the fuel in towards the end of the race. Gassner has led since pretty much the exit of La Source on lap number 1 after he got that immense start from the row back on the starting grid. Fiduci, though, still second place. Well, he got second place in the sprint race as well, so a second place in the feature pretty much secure his slot in the upcoming season of the ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship. But, you know, in this situation, I think we discussed it so many times in the main season last time out, and of course in other RaceRoom eSports competitions as well, even other sims as well, that despite second place being enough for Fiduci to secure his place in the next season, there's a racing driver urge that happens when you have the race leader in front of you. No matter what, no matter if it's ideal, it's the safest option to sit there in second place, get a second place, and qualify yourself into next season. There's a racing driver urge to go for the race win, and I wouldn't be surprised if Fiduci does decide that he wants to rattle Mark Gassner's cage here towards the end of the race. He won't do it this early on. He'll prefer to try and work with Gassner and try and build the gap to the drivers behind so that they have space to do a little bit of fighting later on, but sometimes drivers can be a little bit irrational and go for moves that perhaps on second thought should not be considered. Just calmed down a little bit more further back through the order. I think that big instance just kind of spooked a lot of drivers for the moment, and well, has caused them to think about their actions a little bit more. Think about displaying some better racecraft, shall we say, in this situation, instead of trying to commit too wide coming through that Radion. As we see driver coming down on towards the pit lane, that is Max Pfeiffer. Max Pfeiffer coming down in. So this is around about the time where you'll start to see the first signs of drivers coming down on towards the pit lane for their scheduled stop. So here comes Max Pfeiffer in. There's another driver in as well. Nikodem Wisniewski is also in at this stage as well. Keithley is in too. So he's trying to get himself a little bit of an undercut here. There's the race leaders. Fiduci, despite getting these good runs coming down the Kemmel Straight, he's been reluctant to try and go for the move over Gassner in towards Lecum. So he's playing a very reserved, a very thoughtful race so far in this one. Whether or not that behavior will translate into the second stint or not still remains to be seen. But this is the way I would run this race at the moment. I'm not a fast driver by any means. I'm definitely not eSports standard. But this is the way I would run this race at the moment. Just sit behind the race leader. You're safe in second place. If you get an obvious opportunity to go for the race win at the very end of the race, then for sure take it. But there's no need to force an issue at the moment. You're ready. If you finish where you are, you're qualified into next season. You don't have to worry about going for the race win. But like I said, there's a racing driver urge. There's something deep in their brains that says just go for the race win, and well, that might end up happening. But we still have just shy of 20 minutes left remaining in this race to see whether that will happen or not. Further back through the order, let's see some of the recovering drivers from the opening lap shenanigans. There is Jack Keithley, who did come down in for his pit stop, so he's on new tyres now. Of course, a little bit of a heavier fuel load as well, which will offset the new tyre performance just a little bit, but should still be gaining time over those drivers and getting the undercut on those drivers that have not hit it just yet. And the fortunate thing for Jack Keithley here as well, I think that will play into his hands a lot, is that he has a bunch of clear track ahead of him. He does not have to worry about getting slowed up by any traffic that's off the pace compared to him. He can just try and get himself into basically qualifying mode at the moment, try and push on every single one of these laps that he has the fresher tyre advantage, and try and jump a couple of spots once the rest of the field decide to head their way down on towards the pit lane. Speaking of, though, we've got another couple of drivers in. Kevin Siggy, Martin Barner, Luciano Wittvogt, Lita Dinya, David Nagy. We got Vermeulen and Rupfeld in. So lots of drivers deciding to take this lap as their pit stop lap. Good chunk of drivers continuing to remain out there, though. P1 through P11 have decided to remain out there on track on their older tyres for at least one more lap. But we're still yet to get to the halfway stage here, so a lot of these stops that you're seeing, technically quite early stops. I have to wonder how long some of these drivers are going to stay out there on these first stint tyres to try and get the better performance in the rubber at the very end of the race, while everyone's trying to manage some quite old tyres by that point in the final couple of laps. Back through the order, you've got, well, ahead of this little battle, we've got two Team Redline cars. This is Jeffrey Rietveld and Kevin Siggy. Hopefully, they will have a little bit of a fair scrap here, if they do scrap at all. You don't want to, the last thing you want is to have contact between the two teammates. We saw that a couple of times last season, so not necessarily between these Redline guys, but some of the other teams that were involved as well. You have to wonder if Siggy has the better clear air pace here. Rietveld might just make it easy for him in terms of an orchestrated pass. No point in holding up the teammate if they're absolutely miles faster than you, but we're still yet to see what the exact situation is between these two for the moment. Keep you up to date with that, though, as we're seeing leaders coming down in. So that's Leon Rudinger. We've got Mark Gassner coming down, and, well, Rudinger stays out, excuse me. Mark Gassner coming down in, Fiducci coming down in. So that's the top two in your race at that point, coming down in for their fresh tyre stop now. And of course that extra fuel to the end of the race. Rudinger stayed out, Yarshall stayed out, Vanna stayed out, Spartan stayed out, Novosikov stayed out, and Rodriguez also stayed out as well. So the vast majority of the field have come down on towards the pit lane now. Everyone P7 and back have come down in for their scheduled stops here. Coming up to 15 minutes left to go. Almost at the halfway stage of this endurance race for shootout number 1. Rudinger will get maybe a lead lap under his belt in this situation. Don't think there are any bonus points for the leading laps. There aren't. I'm just checking over the rulebook. No bonus points for leading laps. So it's, sometimes in series that do employ that, you see some drivers just try and push it one lap longer just so that they can get the lead lap point. But not in this situation. You get no benefit really from leading laps here, apart from trying to push out that stint as much as possible for Leon Rudinger. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drivers that are continuing to remain out there on their tyres that they put on at the start of the race. There comes a point though where you're pretty committed to the long game. There's either you go super short on the stops or you go super long. Sometimes going straight down the middle, that doesn't really work out in your favour. Well, if you're in a position where you're having to try and recover a race front and have lost positions early on, then potentially one of those extremes might work out better for you than going for the safe option straight down the middle. We do have a little bit of a lull in the race right now as we wait with bated breath to try and see when the top 6 cars will decide to come down in and get their tyres and fuel for the end of the event. Then we might see some of the battles shape up just that little bit more. Let's see where Jack Keithley was able to get up to. Ooh, Tim Yarshall. So Tim Yarshall is in. So is Leon Rudinger. Vanna stays out though. So continuing to log the laps here is the German driver. Rodriguez also stays out as well. Novosikov decides to come down in here at the start of lap number 8, rather end of lap number 7, and get that service for the end of the race. So Vanna continuing to push the stint out, same with Rodriguez. So those are the only 2 drivers now that are continuing to remain on their initial tyres that they started the race on. Where does Fiducci come out in relation to Gassner? Yeah, Gassner comes out ahead by about 1.5 seconds. That's a good gain, actually, there from Gassner in the pit stops. Fiducci not able to keep tabs on him through that phase whatsoever. He was basically leading on the back of him all the way throughout that first stint, but however, now has lost about 2 seconds to Gassner. So maybe that's the gap that Gassner needs to try and go and win this race now. Of course, depending on how the strategies turn out for a couple of the other drivers as well. Michael Rachel in 5th place at the moment. He's sitting up behind Fiduci here. Looking back through the order, Rietveld and Varner. Oh, well, that swap between the red line guys did happen, by the way. Siggy was let through by Jeffrey Rietveld, so Siggy has been released. He's in 7th place. This is the better performance that I was alluding to from Kevin Siggy, I suppose, at the end of race number 1, as didn't have an ideal time. Not a terrible time by any means, but not the performances that we can usually expect from Kevin Siggy. So we're good to see him doing better here in this race. Into 7th place now. Potentially more on the cards as well a little bit later on in the event, if he's able to log some good laps and try and lock on to the back of Rudinger, who's about 1.9 seconds down the road. Vanna comes down in. So this is your final stopper here today. Well, Rodriguez technically is your final stopper, but the two that remained out there have now come down in towards the pit lane. So this will mean that everyone now has served their mandatory pit stop for this 30-minute event. I would expect to see Mark Gassner come through and inherits the race lead, or rather re-inherit the race lead. Of course, he was leading earlier on in the event. And, well, passes those two cars in the pit lane, goes back to the top of the timing screens on the left-hand side. Where does Jonas Vanna and co, well, come out in relation to everyone here? They're dropping outside of the top 10 for the moment. 11th place for Jonas Vanna. That's the position he comes out in. Although the cars on the outside might have a bit more runner speed. No, well, Luciano Vitvo does get past Manuel Rodriguez, by the way, so that's not ideal for Rodriguez. Now he's struggling for speed on the way down in towards Eau Rouge as well. So he's going to have to let Elisa Dinya through. So that's not ideal for Rodriguez. It's sort of a tale of two pit stops there in that one, with the two of the lone drivers that are trying to push the stints out coming off of pit lane. Vanna timed it perfectly, got ahead of the traffic coming off the pit lane, but Rodriguez, just a handful of seconds behind, didn't have the same luck, and now is trapped in this train of traffic. So that's just the way the pit stops go sometimes. Let's have a little bit of an update towards the front of the order. Gassner continuing to pull the gap at the very front of the field. It's going to be a battle for P2, I get the feeling, between Michael Rachel, Fiducci and Rudinger. I think Rachel might have just done the overtake here just a couple of moments ago over Fiduci, which is why my attention was drawn to it. So Fiduci falling back through the order here, just a little bit, well, falling back through the podium places. I wouldn't say he's falling back through the order just yet, but Rudinger behind. Let's see what he can do from P4 here in this one as Gassner. Well, let's see if he's able to maintain that 2-second gap back to these guys until all the way until the checkered flag. Marshall's certainly going very, very quick out there. Look at it, he's actually pulling the gap already back to Fiduci and Rudinger after getting that pass done. So a very, very quick BMW at the moment is Rachel. Is it quick enough for the final 9 minutes to surmount the gap between himself and P1? Remember, he doesn't have the slipstream anymore either, and he might get a bit of trouble from Fiduci as well if Fiduci is able to line up a good run. Cross the line they come then, and well, on to lap number 10 they go. 8.5 minutes left remaining. Gassner still leads by those 2 seconds. That hasn't come down. In fact, it's edged up. The gap has been widened just that little bit on that last lap, almost up to 2.5 seconds now. Back to Rachel. So Rachel, well, he had the speed to get one done over Fiduci. Doesn't quite have the speed to catch up the gap all the way to your race leader, Fiduci. What's going to happen here down in towards Lecum then? Is Rachel going to be forced to go defensive, or is he just going to stay in line? It looks like staying in line is the plan of action for the moment. Not going to go for the move too early. Certainly something you don't want to do, especially given that, you know, it's the top 10 in points at the end of this event that get themselves qualified into the main season of the ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship, and you don't want to be throwing away a decent finish because you've decided to try and go wheel to wheel with a driver for just that, you know, 2 extra points or whatever. If you feel you've done good enough in the sprint race, and now if you're feeling you're doing very well in the endurance race, there's not really an appeal to be going for those extra points at the stage if you already know that you feel pretty safe as far as the standings are concerned. So that's one thing to think about here. Some drivers will think about it more than others, let me tell you that. For some of them, the race win is the only thing, and passing cars is the only thing that's important in the entire world. But you do have to take a bit more of a more thinking person's race into proceedings here when you've got the exact outline, the exact situation that will bring you into that main season. Further back, you got Leonard Carten and Manuel Rodriguez. Very, very close on the way through Blanchimont. Carten's basically pushing Rodriguez through the fast left-hander. Now we'll potentially look to make the move. A little bit of contact on the rear bumper. Not ideal. There's a fight going on ahead as well between Vermeulen and Rietveld, and I think Vermeulen got himself that position gained as well. So a couple of changes going on in the mid-pack here. Of course, could be important if some of these drivers are on the edge in terms of trying to get themselves inside the top 10 in points after this one or not. There's the side-by-side between Rodriguez and Carton once again. Carton's going to lose a bit of momentum here down towards Eau Rouge. Looking further up the order just to see if Fiduci's going to go for one over Rachel. Nope, Fiduci, he's taking the sensible approach at the moment, just maintaining in line. Yarshel behind Wisniewski as well for P8, same sort of situation between the two of them. Carton, though, seems pretty desperate to try and get past Rodriguez. Rodriguez will try and cover off the inside, then the outside. Not sure what to think about that, but Carton will remain behind for now. Doesn't commit to any move through Lecombe. Coming up to 5 minutes to go here in shootout number 1 of the ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship. Of course, shootout number 2 will be coming up in a couple of days' time, on the Thursday, I believe it is. So, yeah, that would be potentially a really crazy qualifier, especially if, well, this one's leaned a little bit more relaxed, to be honest. Of course, we've had some good fights here and there, but I think the drivers can't sort of understand what the deal is. Top 10 in points gets you through. There's not really that much point in going for anything more than that, apart from the bragging rights, to be honest. Continuing to look at these, well, front runners. Well, the front runner of Marc Gassner is well, maintaining that 2.3, 2.4, sometimes even 2.5 second gap for the race lead at the moment. Everyone else is trying to squabble for those final couple of podium positions, though. Feels like a little bit calm before the storm. Into the closing couple of laps now. Still no signs of battles happening inside the, well, the podium spots. Battles happening elsewhere, though. Carton is still trying to get past Rodriguez, and he's not finding all that much success, if I'm being completely honest. Let's have a ride on board with him as he looks his way down into Eau Rouge. Yeah, don't stick the nose down in the inside here. That will end in tears. Just make sure you get the good line through towards Radion. Get the good run off the top of Radion so that you can carry the momentum then coming down the Camel Straight. So Rodriguez is going to defend towards the inside here. Can Carton complete the move the long way around at the first apex as we'll go? Oh, they were looking at 3 wide there potentially, but it's 2x2 instead for these positions further back to the order. And well, Jack Keithley just out of nowhere, getting himself involved in all of this as well, as Rodriguez loses the position to not only Carton and Milska, but Keithley's able to pick up everything there pretty much. So a good boatload of points for Jack Keithley in that situation. And, well, the rest of them having to scrap all those very minor points at the very bottom of the order. Points are scored down to P21, by the way, so these guys down here are scoring points, just not many of them. Depending on when where that timer expires, be coming on towards the final lap here. So there's Marc Gassner. He's driven a fantastic race for MRS eSports so far in this one. Got the fantastic start, stuck it down the middle 3 wide, down in towards La Source, kept the position, extended the gap, no dramas in the pit stops. Comes across the line now to start the final lap. Yeah, it was about 1 minute and 55 seconds on the clock last time he headed his way across the line. So with lap times in the 2:16s, that is confirmation that this is the start of the final lap for everyone. So Gassner looking very, very confident in the race leads, as long as he's able to keep it on the grey stuff. Hopefully I'm not cursing him. he will be able to come through and take the race win here in the endurance race of shootout number 1. But still a question mark hanging over these podium positions, or the rest of the podium positions even. P2, 3, well, P4 also involved in this one. No moves being made in towards Lecombe. Moves being made further down the order, though, as Nikodem Wisniewski slightly ahead of Tim Yarshel. Yarshel trying to fight this one back. He'll have the inside for the second apex here through Lecombe. They're still leaning on each other's doors as, oh, Yarshel almost turns right across Nikodem Wisniewski. Wisniewski getting into his right rear. They're still wheel-to-wheel on the way down in towards Rivage, Bruxelles. Oh, Wisniewski sticking it on the inside, able to slide up across the nose of the fellow BMW and keep that P8. So that one happened all of a sudden. Wasn't a battle that we were really keeping track of over the last handful of laps, but it showed some signs of life, but it seems like the life has already been killed. So there's now a half a second gap between the two of them on this final lap. Back towards that battle for P2 though. I think the situation in this one is, well, if we get the confirmation of it if they don't challenge each other into the bus stop. But I think the situation amongst these three is that, well, they've decided, okay, we're scoring good points in this endurance race. There's no need to risk it by going side by side and having a fight of it. Just secure the points, secure the position inside of the main championship. Here comes Fiducci though. Does he go for the move down in towards the bus stop? He does actually. He might as well give it a try. He has a slight overlap coming through the first apex. Differing lines being taken through. Rudinger on the back of this one, trying to third party in it. But in the end, the status quo is going to be maintained. Mark Gassner though comes across the line to win the endurance races shootout number 1. Gassner with the move of the race at the very start of the race. Come home through and well, get first place, get the maximum points from this particular event. That should set himself up for qualifying inside of the top 10. Of course, we will get ourselves confirmation of who exactly the top 10 are in terms of points after this one. Of course, that will also be pending stewards review as well. That's an important thing to consider, as stewards will be looking at a couple of incidents after this race and looking to see if any adjustments to the results need to be made at the end of tonight. The rest of the drivers slowly but surely heading their way through across the line. They'll take the cool-down lap here as well. A pretty relaxed affair for both races here at Spa Francorchamps. We'll see who gets themselves qualified in just a couple of moments' time. There's the finishing results. A confirmation of the unofficial finishing results. Mark Gassner, Michael Russell, and Gianmarco Fiducci. Those are your podium finishes. Rudiger and Siggy finish out the top 5. Barna, Nagy, Wisniewski, Yarshel and Pfeiffer round out the top 10 cars. And you have a look a little bit further down the order. You have Luciano Wittvoet-Digne, Greenfeld, Vermeulen, Keithley, Carton, Pilska, Vosikov, Hoogveld, Savokov on the outside, well, just inside of the top 20. And those towards the bottom, Ibion, Günzer, Rodriguez, Vanna, Markovic, Kribner, Berker, Fielder, Race, Storneden. Some pretty big names down at the bottom of, well, it says race 1, but technically it is race 2, the endurance race. That's the order, P1 through to P30. Of course, the calculations are going and the spreadsheets are being updated with regards to calculating the points to see who goes through to the next stage of competition and who does not. But remember, of course, we do have another shootout to be concerned about as well. In just 2 days' time, on the 13th, we will have a shootout at Hockenheim, where another 32 drivers will try and get themselves qualified into the main ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship season. That's the calendar. Of course, it's going to be pretty much a month's break between our second shootout and the first round of the main season at Brands Hatch. Then we head to Watkins Glen and the Nürburgring. Then Zandvoort with Silverstone and Monza finishing off the season. Again, that finale date will be confirmed given whether it will be either a live event, in-person event, where drivers will be able to see each other, compete right next to each other in the studio, or rather in the at Oschersleben, in fact, for the ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship round the real life championship round number 1 will be happening on the 19th of April. So restrictions pending. We'll see what happens with regards to that one. I'm seeing a couple of things in the drivers chat, just thinking, well, at least Ben Spanky thinks that Jack Keithley has got himself through for the moment. So of course, we will just have to wait and see what the exact situation is there. Of course, that's all guessing at the moment until race control finish off their deliberations. Thank you everyone for watching, though. That was a pretty intriguing couple of races there. Andreas Undresa, thank you very much. Nice race. Lots of reactions about the big incident that we saw at the top of Erosion Radion at some point during this race. And well, we'll get to see the point standings then. So it'll take me a second just to load this in, everyone. But we do have confirmation of the top 10 today that have booked themselves a slot inside of the next season. And in fact, I can bring that up on screen for you now. So these are the top 10 drivers that have got themselves qualified into the ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship season. Gianmarco Fiducci, of course, we kind of expected that. He got P2 in both the races here today, so he comes through on top of the shootout with 64 points. Rudinger and Keithley, they are tied on 47 points. Both of them are through. Mark Garsner is through. Kevin Siggy is through. Nikodem Wisniewski is through. Max Pfeiffer is as well through in 7th place. We got Michael Raschel getting himself booked a slot as well in 8th place. Tim Yarshall will go through, and Martin Barner will go through as your final qualifier here at Spa Francorchamps for shootout number 1 of the ADAC GT Masters eSports Championship. So those 10 drivers that you see on your screen, they don't have to do shootout number 2. They go straight through to the championship at the third week of February. So that's the situation there. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining me for this one. It's been a pretty fantastic affair here at Spa Francorchamps. I didn't actually use this, by the way. Hi, this is me in person. But thank you very much for joining us over the course of this event. But, well, you don't have to wait too long for more RaceRoom action here on the RaceRoom YouTube channel, because we do have the second shootout coming up in a couple of days' time. Same time, same place on Thursday, I believe. You simply do not want to miss it. But for now, my name's been Connery Maddock, and I'll wish you a pleasant rest of your evening. That was shootout number 1, but shootout 2 is coming soon.